Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Tes in Baba Kama, as we learn from Achenu basis from Rav Shapiro. The Mishnah talked about the basic idea of that if you're moda to a claim that you first swore that it was lost, you only pay the keren unless you're moda by yourself. You're moda by yourself, then you pay keren b'chomesh ba'oshim, as we've learned. That's sham zelos. If you swore falsely that it was stolen from you, was burgled from you, and then your moda, you also pay the same keren b'chomesh ba'oshim, but if Adam came, then you pay kefil. Then the Mishnah went on to say a big thing, that if you stole from your father and you swore falsely to him and then he died, so you have to pay to the Yorshim. Now there's a shaila that when he's the Yorshim, let's say you had other brothers, he had other sons, or he had brothers. If you were the only son, there were other Yorshim involved. In other words, technically you could say, well, he's dead now. You're also a Yoresh, right? You're also a Yoresh. So do you have to return your own share? Maybe technically you don't. You were a Yoresh, you inherited that. However, to be Yotze Hashava, at least it's Drabana and it's a Shav, it's Drabana Daraisa, but at least you have to return it. So that's the idea. You have to return it to them and the whole amount, and you can get your share afterwards through some idea that you borrowed some money. They'll collect the money that you borrowed from that Yoresh. But the point is that you return it physically. You return the money to them. Okay, and the Mishnah wanted to ask another case in the Dharm, which isn't really related to our to Baba Kama. However, the Gemara says, let's say you're the only Yoresh. Let's say you stole from your father, and then he died. Now, the Mishnah said they use the word Asham, Yuchayva Asham. Also, the Meforshim take that out in the Mishnah because technically, if you're not really Chayiv Midaraisa, you don't have to bring a carbon. There's no Chayiv for a carbon. Karen B'chomish maybe is at least Rabban, and you have to make a good Hashava. Amar Rabbi Yosef, says the Gemara in the third line of Daf Kuf Tes. Amar Rabbi Yosef, let's assume you're the only Yoresh. In the Mishnah, we talk about where there are other Yoreshim involved, so you have to return it. You have to return it to them, even return your own share, and then you'll have some way of getting it back afterwards. But you have to return, you have to make a proper return, a proper Hashava. Rabbi Yosef says, what happens if you're the only Yoresh? There's nobody else. So what do? Give it to yourself, take it from one pocket to another? You have to make a Hashava, and you have to give it to tzedakah. The money that you stole from your father, even though you're his heir now, you have to return it to tzedakah. I guess when you return it, you can use it for some other purpose. Give it to tzedakah. You could use it for ksubas isha. You could use it for different things, but you have to say, this is what I stole from my father. Okay, that's what you have to do. And is there a way to get it back? Again, maybe you can get it back through the subterfuge of borrowing money and then having a collect from there. If you're giving it to tzedakah, maybe it's not so simple as that. But in any case, you shouldn't keep it. You shouldn't keep the money that you stole. You should return. Says the Gemara, here we get to this issue of mechila. If you're the only Yoresh, you're the sole heir, as they say, right? The sole heir. What do you return? What do you have to return it for? Amai nimchle nafshi can be mochel. Okay, you say, you have to be yotze hashava, but you can return it. Let's say, take this case. Let's say I stole from somebody, then I mowed it to him. Right? I stole it. Let's say he's mochel me. He says, keep the money. I don't mind. I got plenty of other money. It could be mochel. We had that before. Nimcha, why can't he mochel himself? Milotan, did we not learn back on Daf Kuf Gimel 6 blot ago? Mochel Karen, mochel chomesh. If he's mochel the Karen, not mochel the chomesh, right? Then if he's mochel, what did the Mishnah say? Mishnah said mochel sakaren, mochel chomesh, mochel zalzeh. Listen, Shuvata. Ain't it so he doesn't have to go. He doesn't have to make all this. All the effort to return to him, even wherever he is across the other end of the world, doesn't make that effort. The point is, he could be mochel. So why can't he mochel himself? Just like, let's say he stole from somebody else. The other guy can be mochel him. So now he's the sole heir of this money, right? That he stole from his father. But he's the sole heir. So whatever his father had, he has. Let him be mochel himself. Why can't he do that? That's what the Gemara asks now.
Just like Trump is going to.
Pardon?
Just like Trump is going to pardon himself.
Right. Yeah, pardon yourself. Okay. That's what the criminal thing here. Yeah, there's also criminals, but it's cash. It's not easy to understand, being mochel money. Money, you can be mochel. It's very easy. You can be mochel for a sin also, any kind of a sin. But why can't he mochel? Why can't he forgive it? Why do we learn mochel as a kevin mochel chomish? Alma bar mechilu. Am Rabbi Yochanan lo kasha. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Kiva. It's a machlokas. Says, you know what? Who says over there that you can be mochel back on Daf Kuf Gimel, the earlier Mishnah? That's Rabbi Yosef Glili. He says you can mochel. Rabbi Kiva says you can't be mochel, even yourself, the Tanya. Now, before we start this brisa, which we're going to say right now, it's really going to, but keep your finger right there on that line, Tanya, and look at the next page. Go to the next page, tomorrow's Daf Kuf Yud. Look at the beginning of the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Yud. There we're talking about the following thing. It's based on the psukim in Bamidbar Hay. Hagos l'sager. You steal from a ger. Now, why are we comparing this to a ger? Because this is similar to a ger who died with no yorshim. A ger, every Jew has yorshim. Rahman al-San, you know, people who have no children, no family. They have a father, a grandfather. They have a third cousin. You always relate it to somebody, right? He might be in the other world, but there's always somebody. Who is the only person who has no relatives whatsoever? A ger who died before he had any children, right? He had no children. Nobody inherited him. So here we say, let's say you steal from me, and that's what's similar here too. You're the sole heir. You are the heir. If you stole from your father and there were no other heirs, he had no brothers, no children, so except for you. So you're the heir here too. Let's say you steal from a ger, Benishbal, and you swore to him. You swore that you didn't steal, and then he died. He died. So what do you do? Who do you pay? Huh? Hefker. So the Torah says you pay the Kohanim. As a misham kem v'chomish l'kohanim, v'asham is you bring the carbon shenemar. This is the pasuk ein leish goel. That's the source of this whole idea about Karen v'chomish, about the Karen v'chomish v'asham. That pasuk says over here in the beginning of Parakeh. You swore falsely. Visvadu, and then you're moda, you're moda that you lied. Hashama here means the gezel. You got to return the money. Barosha, b'chamishi, so he's at 25% or a fifth. V'nasal shemasho. Ish goel. If he has nobody to pay, now he has nobody to pay. Who is that? Who's the person who has nobody to pay? There's always somebody heir. The answer is a ger. So what do? You give it to the Kohen. Besides the carbon asham that you have to bring. In other words, you always have to, if you swear falsely that you didn't steal the money, then your motor, you pay, like we say, 125%, and you bring a carbon. But who do you pay if there's nobody to pay? There's nobody to pay. You're the only person who has only paid. You stole from a ger and he has no children. Again, the Mishnah says, "Shenemar ben ish goel, lashav hashem mal shulav, amush lashem lakoyim, mavad el kippur mishachav ba'olav." That's what the pasuk says. You steal from a ger. Pardon? No, you in the case of a ger, you may not, because the Torah said specifically, give it to the Kohanim. Give it to the Kohanim. Now, where could you just keep it? Well, giving it to tzedakah is a nice thing, but that doesn't solve you of the problem. In this case, in the case of our Mishnah, where you stole from your father and you're the sole heir, so the Rav says, yeah, you have to give it away. You can give it to tzedakah too, just give it away. There's a subterfuge to get it back, but you have to give it away. Fine. You have to say, this is what I stole from my father. Fine. But the question is, why can't you be mochel? Why can't you be mochel? We said before you could be mochel, that if you stole from somebody, you could be mochel. So we said, oh, that's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Yosef Glili says you could be mochel. Amrish goes like Rabbi Kiva. Now look back on our daf, daf kuftes. Daf kuftes the Tanya. Im ein ish goel. That's what the pasuk we just got. Im ish goel lashim b'ashim. Somebody return it to. You swore falsely. You admitted. You have to pay him 125%. Let's say there's nobody to pay. Is there anybody who doesn't have a redeemer of some sort, doesn't have an heir of some sort, a Yoresh, a fourth cousin, a 20th cousin? There's somebody, if you go all the way back to Yaakov Avinu, we're all related. Ella begets like ger custom. We're talking about you stole from a ger. Okay, that like the next Mishnah is going to say, like we just saw the Mishnah of Kuf Yud, you're going to steal from a ger, and we're comparing it because it's the same idea. Just like by a ger, there's nobody to pay. It's okay. So there, the Torah says you give it to the Kohen. Here too, okay, who do you give it to? Here where you stole from your father, there's nobody by giving it to a Kohen. Okay, so what can you do? You say give it to the tzedakah, give it away. Why can't you just be mochel yourself? Okay, so he says this case. Haresha goes, let's say you stole from a ger, and you swore falsely. Then you heard that the ger died. Now, what did the pasuk just say? What are you supposed to do if the ger died and there's nobody to pay? You got to give it to the Kohanim. Okay. He was on his way up, bringing the 125% and the carbon to Yerushalayim, because that the pasuk says you give the money to the Kohen and you bring your carbon asham. Upagabo sager. Lo and behold, the guy wasn't dead. The ger that you thought died, you heard that he died, so you bring it to the Kohen. You met the ger. Oh, I was going to return the money to you. I now I'll give you the money, and I'll bring the carbon to the base of Mikdash. I have to give it to the Kohanim. The ger said, you know what? I don't want to take the money with me right now. I don't have a place to put it. You'll owe me the money. Okay. He converted it to a loan. In other words, it's like he returned it to him. And he says, don't pay me now. You'll pay me later. It's a loan. Keep the money and you'll pay me later. And now the ger died. Okay, there's Zachalav Mashma Yada. You get to keep it. If I owed a ger money, not in this case where you swore falsely and you have to make a restitution by giving 125% and bring in a carbon. Now I return the money to him. Now I might still have to bring a carbon because I admitted it before, but now as far as 125% goes that I owe him, it was simply a loan. If he died, I keep it. Well, who should I give it to? I don't have to give it to anybody. Rabbi Yosef Glili says, in this case, where you owe the money basically to yourself, right? What do? You don't have to return it to any place. You can be mochel. Okay, now he owed me the money, right? He turned it to line mochel. Rabbi Kiva, there's no takana. There's no way to remedy this. You gotta give it out. Give it to a stock. Give it away, like you say. You can't keep the money. So Rabbi Yosef Glili, lo shnol nafshei, lo shnol acherim. Whether you're being mochel somebody else, like back in Daf Kuf Gimel, where the nigzal you stole from somebody, he's mochel you, or like over here where you're mochel yourself, it's okay. Matzi mochelei, because Rabbi Yosef Glili says it back on Daf Kuf Gimel. We're saying, and he's saying here too in the case of the ger, you get to keep it. Matzi mochelei, you can be mochel. Rabbi Kiva, lo shna acherim, lo shna nafshei. It's more likely to say you can be mochel somebody else. You can mochel yourself is a bit of a stretch, right? But Rabbi Kiva is saying in our Mishnah, you can't. Our Mishnah says you can't keep it. You got to give it away, right? You can't keep the money. You got to give it away. Why? Gemara says if you're the only heir, why can't you be mochel? Goes like Rabbi Kiva says you can't be mochel. You can't be mochel yourself. You can't be mochel others, right? L'masi mochel. So Rabbi Yossi, who I did Daf Yomi lozak milva, even though this case was whether you met the ger on the road and he converted it into a loan, even if you didn't convert it to a loan, you could also be mochel. The reason he said this case of Zak Milva that he converted Milva, that feels like even though he converted it to a loan, since you originally stole it from him and you were moda, you can't get away with just you being mochel. You can't keep the money. You got to give it away. Okay, so what are we saying now? Question is on our Mishnah, why can't you be mochel if you're the only one? Oh, our Mishnah goes like Rabbi Kiva. Over there, the Mishnah Kuf Gimel goes like Rabbi Yosef Glili says you can't be mochel. Maskul Sheishes Yihachi. If that's the case, why do you have to say Mishnah Kuf Gimel is Rabbi Yosef Glili? The Mishnah Kuf Ches is Rabbi Kiva. If that would be the case, Rabbi Yosef Glili Shmina Nafshei. Why does Rabbi Yosef Glili tell me that if Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that even when you stole, so to speak, from your father and you are the heir, you have to return? Why can't you just be mochel yourself? Why do you have to say? And Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that in a case like that, you could be mochel, but our Mishnah doesn't say that. That Mishnah goes like Rabbi Kiva. If you were to say that Rabbi Yosef Glili holds in all cases you can mochel, why didn't Rabbi Yosef Glili tell us that? Why did he tell us the case on Kuf Gimel, you're mochel somebody else, where the nigzal is mochel the gazlan? They're two different people. Why? Let Rabbi Yosef Glili tell you if Rabbi Yosef Glili really holds that you could always be mochel yourself. So tell me that case. Rabbi Yosef Glili l'shmina nafshei v'koshkein lacherim. In the case over here with the ger, where you met the ger on the road, there he converted it to a loan. That's different because he converted it to a loan. How do you know Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that you could even be mochel yourself? If Rabbi Yosef Glili holds you can mochel yourself, tell me that case. Why did he tell me the case on Kuf Gimel where you mochel somebody else? If you can mochel yourself, certainly you can mochel somebody else. And Rabbi Kiva holds that you can't be mochel yourself or others. Say Rabbi Kiva also let him tell me you can't be mochel even others. Lo masi mochel v'kosher, you can't be mochel yourself. The lo masi mochel. Elam Rav Sheshes, you don't have to say that the two Mishnayos are two different authors. Elam Rav Sheshes, Hava Rabbi Yosef Glili. Both Mishnayos back on Kuf Gimel and our Mishnah over here that we just learned on Kuf Chesam and Beis goes like Rabbi Yosef Glili. Kikar Rabbi Yosef Glili masi mochel lacherim. When Rabbi Yosef Glili said Daf Kuf Gimel you can mochel somebody else, the nigzal can be mochel goso. If I owe you money, you're right. If you owe me money, I have the option. I have the it's my option to say I'm mochel you. I can be mochel the money. Maybe you want to give it that stock anyway, fine. But I can be mochel you. That makes sense. So where do we say you can be also others? You can't be mochel yourself. In other words, we're saying now that the Mishnahs go like everybody. The question is in our Mishnah, why can't you be mochel yourself? The answer is because of the sin that you committed. You can't be mochel yourself. Just like by a ger. If a ger dies and you swore falsely to him and then you admitted it and he died, and he died, you can't say, well, I'll keep the money. No, the Torah says you got to give it to the Kohen. Bring the carbon. The same thing over here, you got to give it away. So why in the case of the ger do you say you're zocha? Why do you investigate mishum zachum milva? Rabbi Yossi Glili holds, yes. If you hear Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Glili clearly argue, in the case where you met the ger, after you admitted you were taking your money to Yerushalayim to give to the Kohen and the carbon, and you met the ger, and he converted it to a loan. At that point, if you convert it to a loan and then the ger died, then you could keep it. But otherwise, you got to return it, because you can't be mochel if the ger died and there's nobody else and you're the heir, so to speak. You can claim it. We don't say that you can be mochel yourself. Even Rabbi Yossi would not say that you can mochel yourself. You could be mochel somebody else, or you can mochel. You can keep the money yourself if he converted it to a loan, but otherwise not. That's one opinion. That's Rav Sheshes. You could say also that both Mishnahs goes like Mekiv Kimmer, Mekiv Lamasim Machal Lanafshay. Where did Rabbi Akiva say in our Mishnah you can't be mochel yourself if you're the sole heir? You can't be mochel yourself. There, we didn't go that far, right? Maybe according to Rabbi Akiva, Rav is saying maybe according to Rabbi Yossi Glivi, you could even mochel yourself. Zakvalav Dapim. Rabbi Akiva, reading Rashi 3 lines from the bottom page. Rabbi Akiva, the Masim Machal and Avshay, who to comer? Dafagab the ger zakvo, kimla machal mechila gemur. It's not a real mechila. Lonafkei mitoras zela. Aval migza legaslan motor Rabbi Akiva the machal. In other words, kuf gimel could go like Rabbi Akiva also. You can machal somebody else. You just can't be machal yourself, right? Because you committed a sin and you're not going to get away with it that easily. At least even if this is Rabbanan, but that's the idea. You can't be machal yourself. So again, kim Rabbi Akiva l'masi machal. That's on Kuf Chesam and Beis. Avalachayim back on Kuf Gimel Masi Machal Mechlal. Right? According to Rabba, it's mashma. Right? We're saying even Rabbi Akiva holds you could be mochel somebody else. You could be mochel. You can't be mochel yourself. So what's machlo? Because we said by the ger when you met the ger, mashma Yossi Gli holds you could be mochel even yourself. Rabbi Akiva says you can't be mochel yourself, and then the Mishnah goes like Rabbi Akiva. Right, but mashma is mashma that maybe you could even be mochel yourself. If you can mochel yourself, then when the ger dies, if you stole money from a ger and you swore falsely and then you admitted it, so the Torah says you got to give the money to the kohanim, right? Why mochel yourself? You mochel yourself. According to Rabbi Akiva, you can't be mochel yourself. Fine, but if Rabbi Yossi Glili would hold that you could be machal yourself, even if you didn't convert it to a loan, because we're saying that's the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Glili. They're arguing in this case, right? Because Mashma Rabbi Akiva Yossi Glili says you could be machal yourself. So how do you have to give? When would you have to give the money to the kohanim? You could always be machal yourself. So Rabbi will explain. You stole from a ger, b'nish below. Again, we're talking about a ger who had no yorshim. Obviously, he didn't have any children after he converted. And you swore to him. Umeis, again, the ger died. After he died, you admitted it. When is the chiyuv always to pay 125% in the carbon? When you're moted to the person who you stole from. But over here, you're moted. You see, by the case of the father, it's a question: when was he moted? Rashi says he's moted after he died. It's a whole question about that. Whether it could be that it's all drop on him. But over here, when will you say the Torah says you got to give money to the kohanim? When you stole from a ger and you were moted after he died. When you were moda, Hashem Kadosh Baruch had already acquired the money, but also gave it to the kohanim. When do you say what? You could be mochel yourself. If let's say you were moda to the ger that you stole, he was still alive, right? And then he died. So you could say you're mochel yourself. There's nobody else to acquire the money. Well, where's the Torah speaking about? You got to give it to the kohanim when you're moda after he died. That's what Rabbi Yossi could learn according to Rabbah. according to Rabbi Akiva, it's no problem because you can never be mochel yourself. So if the ger died, even if you're moda while he was alive, if you're moda while he was alive, you still can't acquire it because you can't be mochel yourself. So therefore, you can't get away with it. So the Mishnah says we're saying here that this parsha again we learn out all the rules of keren v'chomish v'asham from the case of ger. It applies to other people too, but it certainly applies to ger because that's what the pasuk is speaking about. Beginning of Parakeh in Bamidbar. If you sin, how do you sin? By swearing falsely, stealing and swearing falsely. And then this vados chasam in your moda, then you got to pay back the money plus 20%, and you bring a carbon. In English goel, if the person, now we're speaking about this, that's a regular for everybody else. Let's say the person has no yoresh. Why? Because he's a ger. As we said, there's only one person in the world, one kind of person who doesn't have a relation. Every Jewish person who's goes back in time to Yaakov Avinu, where there's no gerim involved, always has some relative, even if it's a 40th cousin. You got some cousin. Who is the one who doesn't have any Yorish? That's a ger. Okay, so then you give it to the Kohen. That's what the pasuk is. You give it to the Kohen. Okay, so now does that apply only if you stole from a ger or also a Yoris? What if you stole from a Yoris, right? Ish goel. If the man that you stole from, it says ish. So maybe we're talking about a man, a ger. How about a ger? So boy, Ravina, ger, ger's mouth. Isha Rachmana below Isha Odilma Orcha de Crow. Maybe the pasuk just talks about a person. Doesn't mean literally a man. Only Rav Amar Ravina Tashmana Tanya Ish. We have a brisa. Ish any of the Ish. That's if you stole from a man who was a ger. Isha How many know if you stole from a gioris, a woman? It says Kshomer Hamushav Harekan Shneim. Because the pasuk goes on to say, what do you do? How do you pay back? Hamushav, which shall be returned Lashem Lekoin. That extra word Hashem Hamushav teaches me to include a woman as well. So why did it say ish? Why did it just say a ger, or just say ein la adam, or whatever? Say some other lashon. Just say imein lo goel. Why say ish? If it's a man, you have to check after him. Im yesh la goelim, you got to be very careful. If it's a man, it says imein lish goel. Okay, that means whoever you're stealing from, if he has no relatives, that's really a ger. But when talking about in general, Amish Goel, say, well, I don't know, he doesn't have any children, he doesn't have any brothers. What am I supposed to do? Go back and check the records? How far am I supposed to go? The answer is you have to check. In Amish Goel, if it's a man, you got to check all the way back, find out his 10th cousin, and give it to him, right? Him, you have to check. But if he's a katan, if he's a ger katan, he can't have any children because he's a katan. He has no relatives. He has no children, no nephews, nieces. He has nobody who came from him because he's a katan. And Rashi says, from here we see the Gemara and says that a katan who's not bar mitzvah is not capable of procreating, not capable of having children. Maybe the human beings have changed over time. Today, I think a 12-year-old could impregnate a woman, but whatever. A child could impregnate a woman, but that's what Gemara says. You assume that a katan does not have any children. So if it's a ger katan, and then he has no children. You say he has a father who converted him, that's not his father, right? That's not his father. We're talking about a ger who was Megayer himself, not the son of a ger. Son of a ger, we're not talking about that. He's a regular Yisrael. We're talking about a ger himself who is a katan. You don't have to worry about him. He can't have any children. You don't have to go check too far. Tanur Rabban. Hashem Lekoin, it says you hear Hashem Lekoin. Kanu Hashem acquired it when the ger died, and you owed him the 125%. So the Hashem acquired it. We gave it to the Kohanim who were in that shift at the base of Mikdash. Maybe you can give it to any Kohen. It says you give it to the Kohen. Which Kohen? Can I give it to Irvin? Can I give it to any Kohen I want, or do I have to give it to the Kohen of that Mishmar? No, it says Shomer Mavad El Kippur Mashiach Chaperbo. Because this is besides the Karban Hashem. The El Kippur means the Karban Hashem you have to bring. Besides that, we're talking about the Kohanim and the Mishmar. We're bringing the Karbanos right now. The Hashem you bring at the Mishmar. You bring it to ship. You can't bring it wherever you live. So you see, we're talking about you got to bring it to the Kohanim of that Mishmar. Tanarbanim. Hareshaya Gozel Kohen. What happens if the Goslin himself was a Kohen? Kohen was a Kohen. He stole from a ger, right? He stole from a ger. The ger, he was moted him, and then the ger died. Now the Kohen says, okay, what are you supposed to do with the money? Give it to the Kohanim. Well, I'm a Kohen, let me keep it, right? I'll keep myself. Kohen, right. So right, Shahaya goes, Minayin Shalo Yomi shouldn't say. Paul Yosel Kohanim goes, I've got it already. Yay, Shali, let it be mine. Bedinu. If he acquires somebody else's, Rashi says like this. Let's say it was a Yisrael who was a Goslin, and he was serving on that Mishmar. He could be Zochet now. He gets the Kohanim. B'shalatzmo, if it's his own, he himself is chayiv to bring the money and the carbon. B'shalatzmo l'koshken certainly should be able to keep the money. We're talking about tachzer sheik. We're talking about giving going to Shiur. So it means he's got to be. We're talking about the money and the carbon. right? And the money, he's got to give it to the Kohanim. He says, I'll keep it myself. Rav Nassim he says, let's say a Kohen wants to bring a carbon. He brings a carbon. He gets to bring his own carbon. A Kohen can always bring his own carbon whenever he wants. And he gets to keep it. But if he gives it to the other Kohanim, then he acquires it. Then the other Kohanim get it too. You can't take it back from them. Until you give it to some other Kohen. But once it's in once it's in his rishus, and so you can't take it away from him. Something I have a chelik in it before I even got it. I have a chelik in it because I'm one of the Kohanim. So you shouldn't be able to take it away from me. So why can't he keep it himself? Says lo. If you're talking about something that he has no chelik in before, just like if you're talking about something that he has no chelik in because it's somebody else's, some other Kohen's carbon, right? Not Rav Nassim, but the first Russia was or Rav Nassim said he has no share in. So if something he has no share in until it gets into his rishus of some other Kohen gave it to him, right? You can't take it away from him. Davar said he had a chelik in before, certainly should be able to keep. Says no. The Gemara says no. But nobody else has a share in it either until this Kohen, some other Kohen who gives a carbon, gives it to them. But just like he has a chelik. In other words, since it's the Goslin and the Ger dies, Hashem gave it all to all the Kohanim. He didn't just give it to you just because you happen to be the Goslin. He gave it to all the Kohanim. But he's got to give it up. He divides it up among all the other Kohanim. Pasuk says, Ishas Karashav Lo Yiyah. Right afterwards, right after that parsha that we were just talking about, it says, the Ishas Karashav Lo Yiyah. Your own carbon, you get to keep. A man can bring his own carbon, right? So if it's his own carbon, why can't he keep it himself? Says, you know what speaking about? He can't bring it his own because the reason he has to give it to the other Kohanim is speaking about because he's tamei. And if he's tamei, he can't bring a carbon. He's not entitled to eat that. A Kohen can't eat anything if he can't eat a carbon if he's tamei. Even Kohen tamei says Rashi, he can't get a chelik in that. Because it's kache mikdashu. It's kache mikdash. Either the carbon, the asham is, and the money that he's given presumably also goes to the Kohanim. It's kodesh. They have to use it for karbanos or whatever they use it for. So it's all here he also think because again kache mikdash. Hashem gave it to the Kohanim. So if he's tamei, he can't get a share in any way. Ella osi lakoin misarachuza. The answer is, how do you know that the Kohen can't keep it himself? Because you learn that from a Kohen. The pasuk says here, Hashem Ayushab. What does it say? Ella lakoin. Hashem Ayushab Hashem lakoin. It says lakoin here, and it says lakoin in a different parsha. What's the other parsha? The other parsha is talking about if a person is makdish yisadachuza, his family land, his family plantation. He's makdish that, he gives it to the base midrash, and he's not poded. What happens if he's not poded within a year? The gizbar of Hegdish sells it to somebody else, and when it goes back to the base midrash in Yovel, because they'll get to return it then it gets distributed to the Kohanim. So it says over there, lakoin misteachuzah. So we learn out Xer Shabbat, lakoin. It says over here, and it says lakoin misteachuzah. The Tanya chuzah. So why did it say chuzah? So the pasuk could have just said lakoin tielo in that parsha over there. Matam aloma. What is that lachuzah? So matam aloma. Minayin l'sara yos lakoin b'yovel. A sada that goes to the Kohanim in Yovel. Why? Because somebody was makdish their field and they weren't poded. They didn't redeem it, and then the gizbar sold it to somebody else, and it goes to the Kohanim in Yovel. Let's say the one who bought it, and the one who bought it before Yovel, the one who bought it from the gizbar himself was a Kohen. One of the Kohanim bought it himself. You shouldn't say, since the Kohanim get Yovel, I've already bought it. Should let the whole field belong to me, right? Again, you got it. You're makdish yisad achuzah. Some guy, master, and he didn't redeem it. So the gizbar can sell it to somebody. Goes after he sells it to somebody, and Yovel comes around, it goes back to the Kohanim. Let's say the guy he sold it to was a Kohen himself, And so the Kohen can say, listen, it's already mine. Let me keep it. If I get to keep other people's fields, like a Soda HaCherem, so meaning it goes to everybody. A Soda HaCherem, it was in his own family, was given to the Kohen particularly. That's his inheritance. That's his Achuza. Achuza Shalo, this is not his. This gets distributed among all the Kohanim. So just like over there, it says La Kohen, and it says over there, La Kohen Tiachazasa, only the Kesarachem, that Sarachem, a Sada that he owns, that his family owns, or that was given to the Kohen particularly, that he gets to keep. But this, he does not get to keep, he's got to return to all the Kohanim. The same thing we say over here, he's got to distribute it among, even if the Goslin of the Ger was a Kohen, he can't keep it himself. If the ger died, he's got to give it to all the Kohanim. Okay, he said it goes out of his hand, and gets distributed among all the Kohanim in that Mishnah. Tana Rabbanan. How do you know a coin? A coin, let's say the Kohanim had different ships. There were 24 Mishmarim, they had different ships. Let's say a coin says, it's not my ship, but I want to bring my own carbon. I want to bring my own carbon. You can do that. The coin comes with all the desire of his heart, and he can serve whenever he wants. How do you know to keep that he gets to keep the meat and the avoda here means the meat, the schar for bringing the carbon, ba'ora and the hide, shalot tamalomer. The ishas kaddish of lo gets to keep it. Okay, so if he's a balmum who can't serve, a coin balmum cannot do the avoda. No snow the Kohen sheba also mishmar. He gives it to the Kohen in that mishmar. But he gets to keep the meat. A balmum can eat, he just can't bring the carbon. So no snow the Kohen sheba also mishmar. He can't choose who he wants because since he can't bring the carbon himself, he's not capable of appointing a shliach. Rashi says, "Balmum roy lechem and roy lahakib as ein yochalas a shliach lakrav mishir." So he can't appoint somebody who he wants because he can't appoint a shliach. No snow he gives it to the mishmar. They shech for him. And according to the first Pshat Rashi, he gets to keep the meat because he's a Balmum could eat, right? Another Pshat Rashi is that he gives it to the people in that mishmar, the meat. Let's say he was an old man who can't eat, zaken echol, or a sickly person, but he can still serve. Then he can appoint any kohen he wants to do the avodah because he could really do the avodah himself. He could shechted, but the avodah, but he can't eat the meat, and therefore he can't appoint somebody else to eat the meat. That goes to everybody in the mishmar. So it's more high zakan echol hechidami. What if idimasi avod? If you could do the avodah, why can't that also be? If he's capable of doing the why can't he eat the meat also? The either lo matzi avodah, he can't do avodah. How could he make a shliach to do the avodah to bring the carbon for him? Under duress, he could do that. He's an old man. Under duress, if he has to, he can push himself. He could do the avodah. He could shech the avodah. So avodah, the chiyavit, avodah, if you do even like the chak, he has to push himself. It's hard for him, but he could do it. It's still an avodah. It's a proper. He shechted it properly. He did the avodah. And he can make a shliach to do it too. Since he himself could do it under duress, he could do the avodah. So he can appoint a shliach to do it. He's capable. You can't appoint a shliach unless you could do the thing yourself. He can't eat it because he's so sick. If he eats that, it's not food. It's like achila gas. It's like gluttonous eating, which is not considered achila. The chiyach is achila gas. He can't eat it. Achila gas alav klum. It doesn't count. So again, if he's an old man who's capable of doing the avodah, he can't eat. Right. So since if he's capable of doing the avodah under duress, he can appoint somebody else to do the avodah. But since he can't eat it, even the chak, it's not considered eating. He can't appoint somebody else to eat, and therefore it gets distributed among the other kohanim. Rav Sheshes. Am I a kohen tamei? Let's say a coin was tamei, but carbon sibor. Now carbon sibor, tum hutrubit sibor or tum tchuyibit sibor, and you could bring a carbon if all the kohanim are tamei, you could bring a carbon sibor even betuma. Let's say this coin was tamei, but carbon sibor knows in l'chol mishir, so he can give it to whoever he wants. So goes to mishra. So the Gemara says, if there are tahar kohanim, he can't. Then he's not capable of bringing the carbon himself, even if it's a carbon seed, because there are other people are available tarim to do. So how could he appoint somebody else to do? So if there are other tarim, tamei matzi abdi, tamei can't do the avodah if there are tarim there, and therefore he can't appoint anybody else to do. If there's nobody tarim, why do you say that the meat goes on shemishmar tamei nenu? You can a carbon tuma, a carbon seber can be brought betuma. It can be makar, but you can't eat it if you're tamei. Rashi says carbon seber ba betuma and nechel betuma. So again, if there are kohanim torim there, how can a tamei kohen appoint somebody else since he can't bring the carbon himself? If they're torim, he can't appoint somebody else to do it. And if there are no torim there, how can they eat it? They can't eat it. Amarava aimed lebale mumin torim. Says this: if he's a carbon, if he's tamei, meaning he's tamei. Let's say all the kohanim are tamei. There was a funeral and they're all tamei. So if he's kohen, he can give it to whoever he wants to the avoda because tuma hutra b'tzibur, carbon tzibur could be brought the tuma if there's nobody else. So he could appoint whoever he wants to do it, to do this carbon. And then what about eating it? That will go to the bali mumin tahorim. A balmum tahor could eat it. In other words, balmum can't do the avoda, but he could eat it. So he could give that to the bali mumin who are tarim. Shabosa mishma. Amar Vashi. The bali mumin tarim are that mishma. If they're tamei, they can't eat it. Amar Vashi. A kohen gadol onein. A kohen gadol who is an onein who lost his kin that day, he could do the avoda. So nos nechol kohen sheyitzeh. If he wants to, he can appoint somebody else because since he's capable of doing the avoda, he can give a shliach to somebody else to do the avoda. But he can't eat it. The kohen, he's an onein, he can't eat the carbon, so therefore he gives it to Anshe Mishmar. Yeah, Mike Mashma is a chiddush. Tanina kohen got a makrib onein. He can bring it as a carbon. Ve'ena ochel, can't eat it. Even in the evening when he's no longer an onein, because Hanina's Laila is only drabbanan, it's not the Arai. So Rashi points out as the pasuk says, "V'achui sekiyomar of onein is only that day, not at night." So he can't eat it. He doesn't get a chelik even to eat it at night. That's the rule. So we already know that he can bring carbon as on. So of course he can point somebody else to do it, but he can't eat it. I might think that Hashem gave him a Rachmana so he can be that since he's a kohen gadol, even though he's an onein, he can be makrav. I might think no. Since he's capable of doing it himself, bringing the carbon as that day when he's an onein, he can also appoint a shliach, but he can't eat it. So therefore he can't eat it. He can't appoint somebody else to eat it, can't give it to anybody that he wants, but rather it goes to the kohanim of that mishmar. This is just an extension of what we said before, that when you can only appoint somebody to do something if you could do it yourself. And that's the rules about kohanim who are tamei or not capable of bringing it themselves for whatever reason. Those are those rules. All right, I'll pick it up from the Mishnah tomorrow about Goes Lesser here. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.